Perfect. So this morning we're going to start in hero's pose. So I'm going to just adjust my block into more of a portrait position that you would have it looking towards the mat. And knees come together and the feet go out wide. As you sit back, you just gently bring your sitting bones down onto the block. So you can use a brick, it will give you a bit more height, or you could use both. Or if you needed and were able to, you can go right down to the floor. But you want to be in a comfortable position with the knees. The quads are going to get quite a big stretch, as will the ankle ligaments as well, and tendons. But we want to be able to sit here for a few minutes and relax. So if you're too low and challenging yourself too much, you're not going to be able to settle the breath. So we're going to roll the shoulders down, and I like to just take the left hand, palm facing up, and then place the right hand on top, the same, so thumbs are together. I'm going to close my eyes and think about really two things. One, letting myself sit up nice and tall and measuring how that feels in my body, so I'm aware and become a little bit more body and mind connected. And then I'll think about the breath a little bit and see if I can bring that from the diaphragm low down in my belly and let that gently move into the collarbones. So not massively big breath, but it's a slow movement that allows the ribs to gently open up. We'll slowly open the eyes. Let the chin drop in towards the chest, and we're going to take some half neck circles. I'm going to draw the chin over towards the left side, lifting the eyes just gently from the floor, looking to the side, dropping the chin down as we exhale to the center, inhaling across the other side. Seeing how that feels in the neck. Noticing any tight spots, if there are any. Just moving through very gently, easing our way through. So very respectful of all of the tiny little bones and attachments of muscles, the discs through the neck. We'll come back into the center. Allow ourselves to just take the hands forwards a little bit. And we're going to lift up and move the block out of the way. Tuck the toes under as best we can manage and see if we can sit on the heels. We're going to move the block towards the back of the mat for later on. Now, if you have to keep your hands on the floor, that's fine. But if you can enjoy that gentle stretch in the arch of the foot, that's great. Let's bring the hands together. Interlace the fingers and let yourself roll the wrists around a few times. And then we're going to release the hands back down to the floor as we untap the toes. On all fours, we come straight into cat-cow. Just drawing the chest forwards, drawing the belly in, tilting the pelvis, rounding the spine, letting the head drop. Inhale forwards. Exhale, press into the shins a little bit more this time. Inhale forwards. Exhale it out. Come back into a neutral position. Sit down into child's pose. Keeping the knees fairly narrow. We're going to walk those fingers a little bit further forwards and see if we can get the crown of the head, sorry, the forehead down to the floor. Crown of the head would be a different pose. So feeling the stretch underneath the arms and down the sides of the body. Trying to feel the ribs out sideways as we breathe in. So shifting where we breathe into from an emphasis point of view. One more long breath here. And on the exhale, just draw yourself back up onto all fours. Now we're going to tuck take the right foot out to the side, pivoting on the right knee. We're going to come into a baby side plank and take the left foot back, stretch out through that leg. Drop the heel onto the floor. Move the hips over to the left a little bit as you bring your right hand just a little further underneath you. Allow yourself to take the left hand up. Now you can stay here if you wish, or you could take another breath. Allow yourself to ease the foot away from the floor. Now you want the toes to point down a little bit. The foot is flexed and the heel lifts a little higher. And the legs just about the level of the hip, roughly. And we'll ease the foot down and come back into the second side. So we'll bring the hands down to the floor, back onto all fours. Tuck the toes on the right foot, slide that away. Pivoting on the lower knee, we take the foot out to the side for a little bit of extra balance. You can bring the left hand in as you drop the sole of the foot to the sky. Push very gently the hips towards the right side. Allow yourself to take the hand up towards the sky. And then if you wish, you can take the foot away from the floor. Again, just trying to get that little bit of internal rotation into the thigh. And as you do so, remember you're still trying to keep the pelvis pointing over towards the right side. So as you turn the toes down, your bottom will kind of float out to the left side a little bit. So you have to thrust the hips a little bit towards the right side. Last breath. Bring the foot down gently. Bring the hands to the floor. Go back into that tabletop position. Tucking the toes underneath. And let ourselves lift the hips up towards the sky. We'll walk into the front of the mat. So forward fold. Feet are parallel and hip distance apart. Let ourselves sink the ribs onto the thighs with a fairly decent bend in the knees. And then bring the hands onto the hips, lengthen the chest forwards, and let ourselves lift up. We'll take the hands towards the sky on the breath in, hands through the heart. Exhale slow and low, taking the weight into the toes, soften the knees as we come down. We'll step back into that down dog. Let it stretch back. We'll take a couple of breaths here. And a chance to stretch the fingers out, get the knuckles down into the ground. Rotate the armpits, squeeze the arms into the center line. Press the heels to the back of the mat. We'll float forwards into plank. Allow the toes to untuck. We'll sit back gently into that child's pose. Head to the ground, take a breath in. Roll the spine back up. Tabletop, tuck the toes. Hips lift towards the back of the mat. And then we're going to come up on the tippy toes and just take tiny little steps with the feet into the front of the mat. Trying to keep the legs straight. Taking the weight over the shoulders into the wrists. And we'll get to a point where we run out of space. So the heels will come down. We'll take that final little step into the front of the mat. Bring the hands onto the hips as you breathe in. Inhale high. Take the hands towards the sky, palms together. And then exhale them out wide. Inhale up. One more time. Now this time bring the hands behind. Interlace the fingers. Squeeze the shoulder blades together and draw the hands down to the floor and draw the belly in. Let the chest lift a little. Let the eyes follow where the heart points. And then we release. Float the arms to the sky as we breathe in. Bring the hands through the heart. And exhale down to the floor. And I'm going to try to lift the toes of the left foot, keeping the heel on the ground. Just take the left hand underneath. So Padangusthasana. It's a strong forward fold where we stand on the hands, palms face into the soles, head down. We try and push the toes, get the back of the wrists almost touching the ground, and letting the hips lift up. A couple more breaths here. Just letting the back of the legs slowly open out as they lift up towards the sky. And then we'll release that left hand out, fingers to the floor, same with the right. Bring the hands onto the hips, lengthen the chest out, and let ourselves lift up. We'll take the hands to the sky, and as we bring the hands in towards the heart, we'll bring the toes together, a little gap for the heels. And then soften the knees over the toes as we sit back into our chair. So tucking the tailbone forwards, we can take the hands out in front, palms face forward, and wider than the shoulders. Sit back as deep as you dare, let the weight move into the heels. Draw the hands back in towards the heart. We'll take that into a revolve version. So the left arm is going to come across the right thigh. Lift the chest from the floor a little bit. And see if you can sink the butt down a little lower. And we'll slowly come across to the second side. Trying to keep the knees together. and the hips and the pubic bone over the center line of the mat. Lift the chest a little, so we drop the bottom down. And on the exhale, we'll come back to the center. Inhale, we'll lift up all the way to the sky. Bring the hands in towards the heart. And now I want to take a step to my left and allow the feet to come nice and wide. So moving into our star pose. So allow myself to take the hands out wide and then turn the toes of the both feet towards the front of the mat. Sink into the front knee, so warrior two. And then if you want to, you can take the back foot a little bit further back. Now, I want a good connection with the back foot, so really press that down and feel all the muscles in this thigh lift up and draw back in towards the hip socket. Check your front knee is over your ankle, pointing in the direction that you are looking, which should be through your middle finger. Just feeling the groins open a little bit, so you're actually trying to open the legs a little more. And then we're slowly going to straighten the front leg. Drop the front hip down and lengthen into triangle pose. So bringing the hand down onto the shin, top hand towards the sky, or rotate the chest around. So still lifting through the side of the body, away from the ground. And we'll soften that front knee. Come back into warrior two. Hands above the head, and we'll bring them down onto the inside of that front foot. Walk the fingers around to the long edge of the mat, turning the toes in. I'm going to take some little twists here into the body. So we're going to drop the hand that was closest towards the back of the mat to the ground. Turn the chest to the front end of the mat, and then extend the hand up towards the sky. Bring that hand gently back down to the floor and take it to the opposite side. So looking towards the back of our mat. Bring the hand down. Same again to the front. Chest turns first. Arms lift second. One more time. Bring the hands down. Soften the knees a little. Lengthen the chest forward so the body is very long. Draw the belly in a little. Hands onto the hips, shoulders and elbows back, and we lift slowly back up. We'll take the hands back out into that star shape and turn the toes towards the back of the mat and sink into the front knee. Warrior two. So again, charging the back leg up. It's very easy when you sink into that front knee to kind of lose the connection to the back leg. We think at this point about keeping these hips nice and level between the front and the back of the mat. And the groins open. Now as you exhale, we'll very low, slowly start to straighten the front leg. Drop that hip down on the front leg and lengthen out slowly. Bring the hands onto the shin, top arm to the sky, rotate the chest up. Again, a little like we did in the side plank, the hips want to move forwards just a little bit to the face siding we're using. So in this case, I'm going to my left side of the mat. And you'll soften the knee into a bend. Come back up into my warrior two. Stabilize the hips. Bring the hands above my head. They come onto the inside of that front leg. Down to the floor. Walk the fingers around. Take a little breath. This time the hand From the front of the mat goes onto the floor, return to the back end, open up into the twist. Bring the hand down on the exhale. Take the breath and rotation to the front of the mat. Coming back. One more time to the back end. And down to the floor, to the front end. And down to the floor. And soften the knees just a fraction, lift the chest forwards, draw the belly in, find your center. Hands onto the hips, shoulders and elbows back, and lift. Allow yourself to take the hands out into that star pose and turn the toes towards the front of the mat. Then take a little breath and soften into the front knee. Then we're going to take something called advancing warrior. So the hands come in towards the heart, the elbows are high. You rotate the body towards the front of the mat and lean forwards. Now my left hand pushes forwards and I lean out over that front thigh and then press the right hand towards the back of the mat. Trying to keep the front knee over the thigh. Now drop the right arm down towards the floor and cartwheel gently back into my warrior two. Straighten the front leg, drop the front hip and take myself into the triangle. Bring the hand down. And let myself lengthen up. I'll soften the front knee. Come back into my warrior two. Square the hips. Inhale the hands high to the inside of that front leg. We gently come down. Walk the fingers around to the long side of the mat, turning the toes in. Get long in the spine. Soften the knees just a fraction as you take your hands behind your back and interlace the hands. Now we're going to drop the hips over the thighs and let the body sink to the floor like a pendulum. And then we'll squeeze the shoulder blades together and take the hands towards the sky. They might drop over the head towards the side of the mat. That's fine if that happens. If your hands happen to touch the floor, you've probably gone far enough. Keeping the belly drawn in. Try and keep those shoulders away from the ears. So squeezing them in and actually moving the shoulder blades towards your bottom, away from your head. Last breath. Ease the hands down to the floor. Let yourself lift up halfway. Soften the knees, draw the belly in, hands onto the hips, and we lift up slowly. Take the hands out wide into our star. Turn the toes to the back end of the mat. Sink into that front knee. So we take advancing warrior again. We bring the hands in towards the heart, elbows are high. Rotate the body. Press right hand forwards, left hand back. Strong back leg pressing down. Now the left hand comes towards the ground and we cartwheel back up into our warrior two. Straighten the front leg, drop the front hip, allow ourselves to lengthen out into triangle. Use the hand down, top arm up. And carefully back into warrior two. Arms lift. Down onto the inside of the front leg. Walk the fingers to the long side of the mat. Take a little breath. And this time again, we're just folding the hips down onto the thighs. And we're going to see if we can walk the hands through the legs and towards the other side of the mat. Keep lifting the hips. You can press into the feet and the hands in equal measure. And then walk the hands through. Lengthen the spine, soften the knees. Hands onto the hips. And we gently lift up. We'll take the hands out wide again. We'll just check before we start that that brick is towards the front end of the mat and within reach. Allow yourself to come into the star shape. Going to turn the toes to the front of the mat and sink into the front knee. Now you want to make sure that your front foot is pointing down the center line of the mat. The reason for it is that that's going to be our base for half moon. We're going to take a little breath from there. We'll bring the hands back in towards the heart, an advancing warrior. Return, rotate, lengthen out through the body. The right hand drops down. We cartwheel back up into warrior two. Straighten the front leg. Drop the hip. Let ourselves lengthen into triangle pose. Now soften the front knee this time. Allow that top arm to just drop round gently. We're going to take the brick forwards of the front leg. I'm going to step the back foot in about 12 inches or so we come a little higher. And take a little breath from here. We're going to lean into the front leg, lift the back foot away from the floor. Allow ourselves to rotate the chest gently around to the side. So the extended leg, the foot is flexed, the toes are just slightly down, the heel is just slightly up. Hips are pushing over towards the left side of the mat. And then very gently, we're going to ease that left hand up towards the sky. Now soften the front knee. Ease the back foot, whoops, down to the floor. That seemed further away than I remember it being. But let ourselves hold on to the brick. Come back up into warrior two. Straighten the front leg. Turn the toes to the long side of the mat. Take the brick into the other hand. Lengthen out. Turn the toes to the back of the mat. Sink into warrior two. Now just place the block or the brick down the other end of the mat. No one noticed. Take a little breath from here. Hands come in towards the heart. Advancing warrior, we turn the body. Press out through the arms. Long body. Press into the back foot. Again, just checking the front foot is down the center line of the mat. Drop that left hand down as we open back up into our warrior two. Straighten the front leg. Triangle pose. Drop the front hip. Lengthen out. Couple of breaths here. Now I like to look towards the floor when I know half moon is coming up. Just helps me feel a little bit more centered, to know where the ground is. Take a little breath from there. Allow ourselves to soften the front knee. Bring the hand down behind. So that left hand is going to walk out. Take the brick forwards. We're going to draw the back foot in about 12 inches or so. Take a little breath, lean into the front leg, back foot lifts. Press out through a strong leg, flex the foot. Remember the toes are slightly down. When you feel ready and you think you've opened your chest as much as you can, gently take the top hand to the sky. Help open the chest. I'm still looking towards the floor. It's much easier on balance. Last breath here. I'm going to soften the front knee and ease the back foot to the floor. Woo. Back up into warrior two. Straighten the front leg, turn the toes in, hands onto the hips. A last hinge forwards. Take a little breath. And then we're going to fold again at the hips. Down towards the floor. Try and draw the elbows in a little bit if they're flaring out to the side. I'll come back up onto the fingertips, lengthen the spine. Slowly zigzag my toes in. Until I feel like they're underneath my hips. So to draw my fingers back in line with the toes. Last fold into the thighs. The hands onto the hips, lengthen the chest, soften the knees, and let ourselves lift up. We'll shake out the legs. Whew. And I'm going to come to the back of the mat using the block. Let's move the brick out of the way. We're going to come into Malasana, so we're just going to step the heels onto the corner edges. Obviously, if you don't need the block, then yourself just have the feet flat to the floor. Hands into the heart. Soften the knees down slow. Imagine the walls behind you. We try and keep the belly and the spine flat and upright. So come down gently into position and allow ourselves to take the hands wide. Draw the thighs apart. Bring the hands in towards the heart. I'm going to slowly bring the fingers to the floor. Walking the hands forwards, I start to lift the hips towards the sky. So crawling my way into a down dog and just turning the heels off of the block. Come forwards into a plank. And I'm going to lower the knees, lower the elbows, slide the feet back till I come completely to the floor. And take a little Sphinx pose there for a moment. So just bring in the forearms forwards a little bit, lifting the chest, rolling the shoulders back, lengthening the legs out. Keeping the belly drawn in, trying to make space in the spine. Again, the heels are very slightly out, toes are very slightly in. The internal rotation of the thighs we look for in most of our yoga poses. Now we're going to let the chest come down to the floor. Take a little breath and then bend the left knee and bring the foot in towards the body. I'm going to take a slightly higher version where I'm going to bring my right forearm across the mat, stay high, and draw my knee in towards the chest. And this is not because I prefer to do the pose, it's because I've just realized that the microphone is right in the middle of my chest. And if I come down onto the floor, it's going to press into me. Not a very good idea. So I'm going to bring the heel in towards the buttock. Let the chest be on the floor. Ease that in. And then we'll release. We'll cross over to the second side. Take a little breath. Bend the knee. Take the hand back, find the foot, and then press the heel into the butt. So if you're able to, you really want the hand to be on top of the top side of the foot. So you're kind of curling the toes in a little bit more. That way you're able to get the elbow towards the sky, release the shoulder a little bit more. Lengthening that knee away. Pressing the thighs very gently to the floor, keeping the belly drawn in. Feeling that quad stretching out nicely on the top of the hip flexors. And then we're going to release. Just wriggle out the hips a little bit from side to side. And then this time we're going to slowly bend the left. Take the hand back, find the ankle joint. We'll do the same with the right, and then we'll lift the chest away from the floor and squeeze the thighs together. And then we're going to press the shins towards the back of the mat. So it helps lift the chest even more. So just thinking about pressing the shins towards the bottom end of the mat. A couple of seconds. Keeping the belly drawn in. Then we're going to try and press the floor into the ceiling with our feet. We're going to lift the ceiling high, and that will draw the thighs away from the ground a little bit. Bow pose. Quite a big one. Think about lengthening the spine. Pressing the shins back, lifting the feet high. One more breath. And then we come back down to the floor. Now, I'm going to draw the knees in towards the body. So I'm going to roll onto whichever side you prefer. Allow yourself to come into a little bit of a fetal position. Just for a couple of breaths. And we're going to completely roll onto the spine. Keep the feet in towards the bottom. Take the hands out wide, palms facing up. We'll take a little spinal twist. So we're going to go to the left first time round. Head to the right. We'll take the knees to the center and let ourselves wriggle over to the second side. And we'll let the knees come slowly back up. Gonna wriggle out the hips very gently from side to side. And then on an exhale, roll onto the right side, use the hands into the floor to lift and let ourselves gently come back up to sitting. So I'm going to come onto my block, the legs out in front, and I'm going to take butterfly pose. So I'm going to wriggle a little bit from side to side just to release the flesh from the cheeks, and then start to bring the soles of the feet in towards the body. So I want to come into that sort of fairly traditional version where the heels are very close into the groin and we let the knees just wriggle out a little bit. So sitting forwards just a fraction at this point, and then taking, in my case, the peace fingers around the big toe. And then I'm going to lengthen the body up and see if I can let the knees relax down a little bit. I want to try and draw the shoulders back a little bit so the chest lifts towards the sky. You can close the eyes, soften the breath. Now, those groins should be relatively open. They might just enjoy this slightly less weight in the groins in this pose. We've worked them quite hard. This is more of a sort of restorative version to work into the hips. I can hear the next door neighbour's dog having a little bit of a woof at this point. I think the dog walker might be coming very soon. Now I'm going to release and just take the hands back underneath the thighs and draw them legs together and lengthen the legs out very gently towards Dandasana. So I'm going to flex the feet back, take the hands out to the sides, draw the chest up towards the sky, nice big shoulders. Pressing the sitting bones down into the floor. And we'll move from here into Janu Sirsasana. So I'm going to draw my left heel into the groin, knee down to the floor. You can use the brick underneath if it does not quite make it. So you need that to be grounded. The foot on the inside of the groin stays flexed, so toes towards the knees. Internal rotate the right leg. Draw the thighs back. Sorry, draw the thighs and the foot back, in fact. Bring your hands onto the shin. Lift the chest, draw the belly in, and then lift yourself up and over the hips. Draw yourself forwards into that fold. If you're able to take the hands gently around the soles of the feet, whilst keeping the shoulders nice and broad and the head staying in line with the body. Otherwise, keeping the hands on the shin. The leg does not need to be straight. And we'll release gently from here. Bring the hands to the floor to ease our way back up. We'll take that to the second side. So Dandasana first. Change Shishasana. Knee down, square the hips, flex the foot, hands to the shin. A little lift. And then hips come up and over. And the spine stays long. Hands come around the foot again. Just helping us draw forwards a little more. Keeping that internal rotation in the thigh if it's rolling out a little bit. So a good way to know that is if your foot feels like it wants to press out to the side and roll out, the whole thigh would be joining in. So we're just turning it very slightly into the center. To counter that, and we'll release from there. We'll take some seated forward folds. So we'll take the legs out back into Dandasana, just sitting up nice and tall. And then we'll bring the left foot underneath and out to the right. We'll bring the right foot across, foot to the floor, settle the sitting bones. Allow that left arm to come up, rotate round. Taking the opposite hand just behind the hip, looking over the rear shoulder, drawing the shoulders back a little bit, lifting the chest up as we breathe in, letting the twist develop a little bit more on the exhale, trying to relax the bottom leg. We'll release. Untangle everything. Dandasana again. A little lengthen, stretch, and then we'll release and take that right foot underneath, knee to the floor pointed forwards. Left leg comes across, sitting bones settle. Ease the right arm up. Get length in the body, rotate round. Allow the hands and the arms to come down. And release. And take the feet out in front. We'll come into a final Dandasana. So just drawing the body up. And then we'll bring the hands onto the shins. You draw the hips up and over. We'll come into a seated forward fold. Take the hands on top of my feet is my preference, but they can go around the outside or hold onto the ankles. I draw my chest towards my toes. Take a couple of breaths here, letting the heels move away a little further. And then finally, letting the head hang. And we'll release. Bring the hands to the floor. Whew. That feels good. And we'll come into a final resting pose for Shavasana. So I'm going to use the block to the back of the mat, and I'm going to take my trusted blanket. You could use your trusted sweatshirt, whatever you've got. And then we're going to come into Shavasana. So feet to the corner edges of the mat, knees high, use the hands behind to roll the spine down gently. And then lengthen the legs out. Hands to the side. And let everything sink down to the floor. Now, I've done a lot of work obviously in the legs, but that will also have meant that the core, abdominals, lower back, obliques, they've done a lot of work as well. They can take a little bit of time to really settle down. So imagine that the body is just sinking down and settling. And by that, it's allowing itself to get closer to the ground. You might need to wriggle out the legs a little bit more, lengthen them away once you've had a little bit of a settling period. Same with the neck. There might be a little length to be found. Eventually we become still. Very gently start to stretch those fingers and toes. And the rest of the ankles join in. After a bigger breath, allow yourself to stretch out in any way that feels good. And let the knees draw carefully in towards the body. And take some little stirs, gentle hip circles, working with the breath. And then in the opposite direction. And then see if we can get them to move in different directions. So more of an infinity loop. And then we'll see if we can reverse that up. See how that feels. And then a final little hug. And a roll over to the right side. Lift the hands the first into the floor to lift. Gently back up, nice and smoothly. Taking a seating posture you find easy. And sitting up tall. Bringing the hands in towards your heart. So we'll take a deeper breath as we close the eyes. And as we drop the chin gently, slowly exhaling, we'll let that natural bow form in the spine, sealing our practice for the morning. Let the breath come back in to build the spine for us, so we can easily lift the head and open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the class.